Good afternoon, everyone. So, yesterday we learned up to ovarian factor. Today we will start the tubal factor. Let's take a quick revision of ovarian factor abnormality. Ovarian factor abnormality when you suspect ovarian factor abnormality whenever there is a menstrual problems, when the cycle is irregular, short, or comes at a very high duration. Normal cycle is between 25 to 35 days is considered as a normal cycle. Beyond this, it's called irregular. When you suspect this, rule out the ovarian factor. Ovulation will confirmed most commonly used method is follicular study or the ovulation study done starting from the day 2 of the cycle, then day 7, and then alternate day up to the ovulation confirmed. Second method is ovulation kit or the LH search kit. Third method is day 21 progesterone. Day 4, the fourth method is carry out the basal day 2H, that is the FSH, LH, TSH, prolactin, and if possible, do the serum AMH. If you do this all investigations, most of the ovulation factor you will get. There are four types of the N ovulation. Type 1 is hypo, where FSH, LH are below normal, means less than 1.2. Treatment is injection gonadotrophins and make the follicles, and then go for IVF. Type 2 is an PCOD, means FSH is normal, LH is double than the FSH or higher than that. So, where LH FSH ratio is altered, and treatment is myoinositol and metformin for 6 months along with ovulation induction drug plus weight reduction and lifestyle modification. Type 3 anovulation is ovarian failure, where FSH and LH is more than 20. Treatment is IVF plus ovum donation. Type 4 is hyperprolactinemia, where prolactin is more than 25 nanogram per dl. Treatment is capsule capgolin 0.5 milligram twice a week for 2 months. If prolactin is very high, means more than 200 or more than 300, then MRI brain is required to rule out pituitary gland tumor. So this is the summary of ovarian pathology. Do you have any questions regarding the ovarian pathology? Dr. Ram, Dr. Sonal, you want to ask? Or otherwise we can go further. Okay. So, okay. So, now we will start with tubal factor infertility. So, the most common method for tubal factor infertility is HSG and laparoscopy. Both have advantages and disadvantages. HSG is non-invasive method, means it is very cost effective and उसके लिए कुछ ऑपरेटिव या ऐसा कुछ करना नहीं होता है. What they do in the HSG? This is the uterus. So they push dye from this os and simultaneously they take a X-ray. So what happens? The dye comes out from the fallopian tube captured in the X-ray. So by looking on the X-ray, we can say that these tubes are patent. Patent means open. These tubes are patent or non-patent. The disadvantages is it only tells the tubes are opened or not, but it don't tell tubes are functioning or not. What they mean? In the tubes there is a endosalpinx are there, like this is a fallopian tube. This is a fallopian tube. Inside there is a endosalpinx. These endosalpinx have the ciliary movement, like this ciliary movement. It helps to it helps the egg to reach up to ampulla. So if these all are functioning, then it is called as the tubes are functioning. So by HSG you can say that tubes are patent, but you can't say that tubes are functioning or not. Disadvantage of the HSG is it is painful, and many people cannot tolerate this HSG. Plus, it is not advisable in case of the PID, previous ectopic pregnancy, and endometriosis. This is the picture of HSG, which shows the uterus and bilateral fallopian tubes. One second, please. Screen recording ચાલુ છે. પેલાને લડી છું પણ ગુરુ હલવું નથી ને. This is the picture of HSG. Hello? Yeah, audible I am? Hello? Okay. So this is the picture of HSG. Okay. So this is the uterus. It shows uterus, and this is the fallopian tube that shows the bilateral free spillage of dye. Means tells that these tubes are opened. So this how we can know that tubes are open or not. But it's a not 100% confirmatory test to rule out tubal testing, because sometimes patient may have pain or patient is feeling so much pain. Sometimes tubes go in the spasm, so they will write this as a spasm of the tube. So we cannot conclude on the diagnosis. So both have advantage and the disadvantage. Advantage is that it is cost effective and easily done. Disadvantage is whole function we cannot know, and it is quite a painful procedure. Then second method is laparoscopy, hysteroscopy, chromopertubation test. What is chromopertubation? Same. When we insert a methylene blue from the cervix and we look through the laparoscope, both the dyes from both the fallopian tubes comes out. This is the picture, shows that methylene blue comes out from the fimbria, and it is collected this fluid into the POD. So this confirms that tubes are opened. It is the confirmatory test, because by doing this we can at least know that this tube is properly working or not. Advantage of this laparoscopy, hysteroscopy is that proper evaluation of the whole female reproductive organ. We can diagnose the PID, endometriosis, any ovarian tumor, as well as some therapeutic value. Suppose if the PCOD, we can do the PCOD drilling. If the tubes are blocked, in certain cases with tubal cannulation, tubes can be opened. So laparoscopy has advantage of both diagnostic and therapeutic value, but simultaneous disadvantage is that it is done under general anesthesia, plus it is quite expensive. Now this is the ultrasonographic picture of hydrosalpinx. What is hydrosalpinx? Collection of the fluid in the fallopian tubes are called hydrosalpinx. Generally, In a TVS or in abdominal sonography, fallopian tubes cannot be visualized. You cannot visualize the fallopian tubes. You can only see the uterus and the ovaries. But when there is a fluid, blood or pus collected in the fallopian tubes, it seen, this is like a balloon structure beside the uterus. So this is a pure case of hydrosalpinx. Hydrosalpinx mainly occurred with PID and genital tuberculosis. The treatment for hydrosalpinx is IVF ultimately, but before going into the IVF, because in hydrosalpinx totally tubal functions are lost. So that's why even if you remove the pus or fluid, the tubes are totally non-functioning. So IVF is the cause, is the treatment. But before going for IVF, bilateral tubal clipping or occlusion is required. Because if you don't do this, the fluid from both these hydrosalpinx comes out, release the endotoxins and may not help the embryo to implant. So that's why bilateral tubal clipping, occlusion or salpingectomy followed by IVF is the treatment for hydrosalpinx. Now, for mild tubal block, means if only there is a spasm or sometimes mild, there is a problem, you can cannulate tubal cannulation and open the tube. But if the tube is severely affected by PID, endometriosis or genital tuberculosis, then tubal cannulation may not be helpful. So IVF is the treatment. This is a HSG showing bilateral hydrosalpinx. You can very well see, this is the uterus, this is the hydrosalpinx tube and both the tubes are blocked at fimbria. So treatment is salpingectomy or bilateral clipping followed by IVF. Now comes the third factor, that is the uterine factor infertility. You have any doubt regarding tubal factor? So we completed two factors, ovarian and tubal. Now two factors are rest, uterine factor and the semen factor. Anyone have the doubt in tubal factor? You want to ask any question or we should go further? Hello? Okay. I think that you don't have any question. Okay. So move to the uterine factor infertility. Now, once you ruled out the ovarian factor, you ruled out the tubal factor, now move to the uterine factor. Now, for uterine factor based diagnostic tool is ultrasound pelvis, USG pelvis. Amongst the uterine factor, fibroid, uterine myoma or the uterine fibroid is the commonest cause for infertility. Now the question comes whether the fibroid should be removed or not. The simple funda you have to remember, the fibroid that alter or obstruct the uterine cavity should be removed. Suppose this is uterus, this is cavity. One fibroid is here, another is here and third one is here, suppose. Now tell me which fibroid you will remove. One is called subserosal fibroid, two is called intramural fibroid and three is called submucous fibroid. Clear? The fibroid that invades The endometrial cavity is called submucous fibroid. Fibroid that lies into the myometrium is called intramural fibroid, and fibroid that lies on the peritoneum is called subserosal fibroid. Now, if the patient have this kind of picture, which fibroid you are going to remove? Anyone can tell? From 1, 2, 3, which fibroid you are going to remove? This is a two-way conversation lecture. It's not you are attending lecture in your college. So if you speak something, then it would be helpful to you. Anyone has idea? Yeah. Why 3 number? Why? Because as I already told you, the fibroid that alters the endometrial cavity is to be removed. Simple. So, baby is lying here. See? Now this fibroid will fails the embryo implantation. So, third number fibroid means if submucous fibroid that altering the endometrial cavity should be removed. Intramural and subserosal fibroid doesn't affect the endometrial cavity. So, if you don't remove it, it won't much create problem. So, when you do the myomectomy, now in which indication myomectomy is required? Type 1, one indication is distorting the uterine cavity. Submucous fibroid interferes with infertility and it should be removed in infertility patients regardless the size and symptoms. Then intramural means type number 2 fibroid. If it distorts the cavity, then it is to be removed. If doesn't affect the cavity, nothing to be removed. In subserosal, also don't advise to remove the fibroid. Simple indication, if the fibroid is more than 5 to 7 centimeter, then it is to be removed. And if it distorts the cavity, then it is to be removed. This is the ultrasonographic picture of fibroid. This is in type. In first picture, here is the fibroid. Here is the fibroid. Sorry. See, here is the fibroid, here is the fibroid, and here is the fibroid. Type 1 में it is central fibroid, means in between the endometrium. Type 2 is submucous, pressing the endometrial cavity, and type 3 is also the central fibroid. So this kind of the fibroid that are going to distort the cavity should be removed. But if the fibroid is subserosal and not affecting the cavity, it should not be removed. Then septate uterus. What is septate uterus? This is a uterus. This is a cavity. Now, normally is this. Now, sometimes there is a septa in the cavity. This is called septate uterus. So, if septa is much more, then it affects the implantation. So, mainly septate uterus are associated with RPL, recurrent pregnancy loss. So, it can lead to recurrent pregnancy loss as well as infertility. So, if you think that septa interfere in the implantation, then it should be removed. This is a septate uterus, and you can do the septal resection by hysteroscopy. Third one is intrauterine adhesion. What are the common causes of intrauterine adhesion? Anyone can tell? Causes of intrauterine adhesion? क्या क्या? Yeah. Second? Yeah. First is most common is infection. Infection could be in the form of most common is genital tuberculosis and in certain cases of the PID. So, most commonly genital tuberculosis are associated with intrauterine adhesions. That is called Asherman syndrome. Second, sometimes it could be due to repeated DNCs. Repeated DNC अगर किया हुआ है तो it can leads to intrauterine adhesion. Sometimes by unexperienced hand, if they curate more basal layer, two types of layers of endometrium, basal layer and the functional layer. Now you just have to remove the product, you don't have to curate the basal layer. सो अगर आपने बहुत उसको क्यूरेट किया हुआ है, विग्रियसली क्यूरेटेज किया हुआ है, then it can leads to the adhesion. So intrauterine adhesion are also common findings seen in the infertility. Because of intrauterine adhesion, patient having amenorrhea, oligomenorrhea, or patient have poor endometrial flow or poor endometrial thickness. If the endometrial thickness is poor, patient obviously don't get pregnant. As we learned in a previous lectures, for the implantation of embryo, endometrial thickness should be between 7 to 12 mm at the time of ovulation. If it is below 7 mm, there is a very less chance of embryo for implantation. So, what are the treatment you give for Asherman syndrome? First of all, it is diagnosed by hysteroscopically. If you put a hysteroscope into the uterine cavity, you can able to find this is a Asherman syndrome. Do the adhesinolysis and then certain medications are given to improve the uterine blood flow. That we are going to discuss. It is not written in this material. So if you want to write it down in the book, you can write it down. What we are doing when we don't get the endometrial thickness more than 7 mm at the time of ovulation. We give the drugs that helps to improve the circulation. So, the most common used drug to improve the circulation are sildenafil, it's like a Viagra. Sildenafil, alive her trade name are available. Alive her 25 milligram, 1 TDS or 1 QDS. Best way to use is inserted in the vagina from the day 6 to day 10 of the cycle. That helps to improve the blood circulation. Second drug is L-arginine sachets, 3 gram 1 BD for first 10 days of the cycle. Third treatment is we mainly used in infertility, means in the IVF cycles. We instill GCSF factor. What is GCSF? It is the similar characteristics of PRP, platelet rich plasma. So GCSF factor 1 ml taken into the IUI catheter and it is flushed into the vagina, it is flushed into the cervix on day 10. Again do the ultrasound 2 days after. If you achieve the thickness, then don't instill. If you not satisfactory, then again injection on day 12 or day 13. Still you don't get the result, go for PRP therapy, that is called platelet rich plasma therapy. Autologous blood to be derived from the patient and PRP is prepared in the lab and that is 0.1 that 1 ml instilled or flushed into the cervix. Still not, then the stem cell therapy, autologous stem cell therapy to increase the endometrial circulation. Still you don't get the result, go for surrogacy. So these are the steps we do to improve the circulation, endometrial thickness, if we don't get adequate thickness for the implantation. I hope everyone has cleared. Dr. Bilkis, you want to ask a question? I am audible to you, Dr. Bilkis? Dr. Bilkis is gynecologist and she had joined for this course and she is doing her practice in Afghanistan. I think there is a network problem. Dr. Bilkis, are you there? Okay. She is new, so अगर ये बंद हो जाता है, if this suddenly stop, again you have to rejoin for the lecture. Then the endometrial polyp. Indications for polypectomy are, Dr. Bilkis, yeah, please ask a question. Dr. Bilkis, please ask a question. You have raised the hand. Dr. Bilkis, you want to ask a question? You have to mute yourself and then ask a question. Then the endometrial polyp. Sometimes any conditions that interfere the endometrium will don't allow the pregnancy to develop. So endometrial polyp in the endometrial cavity has to be removed in case of infertility. Then the adenomyosis. What is adenomyosis? It is a type of endometriosis. It is a type of endometriosis when endometrial glands invade into myometrium. It is called adenomyosis. So if there is a adenomyosis, they can also leads to the infertility. Adenomyosis, same treatment is of endometriosis. So here completes our uterine factor. Now we will move to the male factor infertility. Anyone has the question, please ask a question. Then we will move to the male infertility. Dr. Sonal, Dr. Ram, Dr. Bilkish, whatever you are present can ask a question if you have any doubt. Dr. Bilkis, you are I am audible to you? Hello? Yeah, please say a few words, Dr. Bilkis. Yeah? Hello? You want to ask a question, Dr. Bilkis? Your voice is not heard. So you want to ask a question? Can you drop a question in the chat box? Dr. Bilkis, we are not audible. I'm not hearing you. Dr. Bilkis? Yeah, yeah, now I can hear you. Yeah, now I can hear you. Yeah, yeah, now I can hear you. Please ask a question. Okay. You want to ask any question up to this? Yes, please speak. No, your voice. For what, Dr. Bilki? Yeah, please now speak. Please repeat the question. Please repeat the question, Dr. Bilkis. Yeah. Please repeat the question. Hello. Please repeat the question, Dr. Bilkis. Yeah, but very your voice is broken. Okay, okay. Yeah, got it. I got your question. What is the treatment for adenomyosis? Clear? Okay. So, yeah. 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 So, adenomyosis, yeah. Okay, okay. Yeah, okay. Now, adenomyosis. So, adenomyosis is a type of endometriosis. So, the treatment is same as you give into the endometriosis and adenomyosis are same. So, if it is grade 1, means it is a mild adenomyosis, then you can treat them with OC pills, oral contraceptive pill for 3 months. If there is you think it's a moderate type of adenomyosis, then Lupride depot injection, GnRH, Lupride depot 3.75 milligram, once a month for 3 months. Lupride depot once a month for 3 months, and then because Lupride depot effect lasts for 1.5 month. So give Lupride depot injection once a month IM for 3 months, and after completion of depot injection, wait for 1 to 2 months, because after completion of depot, 2 months later, patient will ovulate, start to ovulate. So the basic treatment for adenomyosis is oral contraceptive pill with